Why can't you relax? Even when nothing is seemingly wrong in your life, even when there's no physical danger. You may not have experienced any physical danger for many years. You may have hardly ever experienced physical danger. But why can't you relax? There is a very common theme amongst people who are into this work, amongst people who are into awakening work, which I've seen a lot and which I've experienced a lot within myself, which is that we just want to be calm. We want the relief of being calm. Because maybe we've experienced nervous system issues for a long time. Maybe we've experienced anxiety in the past. Maybe we're still experiencing anxiety now. And maybe we've done all of the things that you would think would lead to a relaxed nervous system. But still, after all these years, you can't stay calm. You can't relax. Now, I'm not saying I have the only answer for this, but I'm going to give you one potential answer, and you see if it resonates within your own experience. So one reason why you can't feel calm, one reason why you can't feel relaxed, is maybe because you are more powerful than you realize. Now, this isn't me bigging you up. This is me pointing something out which might be true. And I'm going to explain it to you. Say when you were a young child. When you were a young child, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, were you calm? Were you sitting, reading through the day? Were you enjoying being peaceful? Were you somebody who was just naturally very calm and sweet? Now you might say yes, in which case then perhaps your nature is to be calm, and this teaching might not be for you. But for many of us, when we were kids, we were absolute little mental cases. We were running around, smashing things we weren't supposed to smash. We were in a state of joy and excitement. We were causing absolute terror for our parents. This was the case for me. My mum often says that she used to tuck me up in bed at night, and even though she completely loved me, she also just wanted to strangle me because I was such a nightmare. Now perhaps if you were more like that as a child, and then that power, that wildness, that life force, your natural exuberant expression got shut down, because children like that will be shut down because they're too much for their parents. They're too much for a classroom. Now you can be wild and exuberant and powerful as a child, but you can also be super sensitive. So when that super sensitive but super explosive wild child is shut down emotionally, is told they can't do what they're naturally wanting to do, then all of this joy, all of this energy, all of this life force in their body is shut down and contained. And you see it so clearly from the passage from primary school to secondary school. Primary school children are running around in the playground, they're exuberant, they're wild, they're laughing, there's such a lack of self-consciousness. Usually when they get into year 5 and 6 of primary school, just before they move to high school, so when they're like 9, 10 years old, they start to develop this self-consciousness. They start caring about being cool. And they realize if they're themselves, then they're not going to be cool anymore. They're not going to fit in with the other kids. So then they get into high school and there's all of these older kids and they're like, I can't be a child anymore. I can't be myself anymore. And so they hold in their life force. They hold in their natural selves, and they put on this facade of being an adult. They pretend to be an adult when they're not. They're actually a child. And so what this does is they're literally containing the joy in their bodies. They're containing their life force. They're holding it in. And this becomes very, very habituated. And so we grow up holding in a lot of power, a lot of life force. Now, of course, this isn't the only way that our life force gets contracted down. Some of us were in traumatic environments. Some of us have been through traumatic experiences. There's many, many things that add to the repression of our true self. Because if you go through a traumatic incident, for instance, then the fear might be, because when you're truly being yourself, when you're truly in your power, there's less control. You're controlling your experience less. When you're not controlling your experience, you're in the full flow of your exuberant life. But when you go through a trauma, you learn, fucking hell, if I'm in the full flow of my power, my energy, my wildness, my true self, something bad might happen. And so for many different reasons, many of us learn that we can't be powerful. I can't explain all of the different reasons in one video, but you can feel into it yourself. What may have stopped you when you were younger or at any point in your life from feeling safe to be yourself, from feeling safe to be powerful, feeling safe to be wild. Now I'm going to move on to the point of the video, which is why, after all this work you've done, do you still not feel calm? The reason you're wanting to feel calm is because the anxiety, the nervous system difficulty is very challenging. So we get into spirituality, maybe we get into Buddhism, and we learn you're not meant to be all wired. You're meant to be calm. There's meditation practices for calming and healing the nervous system. There's yoga practices for calming and healing. And these are all very good, and for us, to a certain degree, these practices of calming and healing the nervous system are very, very useful. But after we've been calming and healing the nervous system for a while, and still you can't feel calm, you're not relaxed, maybe the calming and the healing of the nervous system isn't the only thing you need. Maybe the reason you're not relaxed is because there's this power inside of you which is burning, which is wanting to come out, which is pushing and putting pressure on your nervous system. Maybe you feel like you're traumatized, you feel like you have a traumatized nervous system, but in fact, it's actually repressed joy in your system. Again, I'm not saying that this is definitely the case. All I'm doing is putting the question to you so that you can see whether it resonates or not. What if there is repressed joy within your body? What is the difference between you now and you when you were a child? And if you can't remember yourself as a child, think about the average child running around a park. Think about how they move their body. Think about how they laugh. Think about how they chase after butterflies. Think about how even watching telly, how they're so in it. Think about how much they enjoy food. Think about how much they sing and make weird noises and dance. I was looking out the window. I was at a restaurant for lunch the other day, and I looked out the window, and there was this girl. She was probably 10 years old, and that she was looking in the reflection of the window, and she was just like, all of her family were there. She was just ignoring them. She was just doing this little dance in the window, like. And she was so free. It was so funny because all the adults were there. They had little coffees in their hand. They had shopping bags, and they were like, yeah. Yes, Palestine. Oh, yes. Oh, God, Keir Starmer. Yeah, oh, the weather. No. And this girl was like in a completely own little world, just doing this little dance, just like in the mirror. The difference is so profound, and a lot of the reason that maybe we don't feel calm isn't because we're completely messed up inside. Isn't just because of the trauma we've experienced. Maybe part of it is that we've repressed our joy. We've repressed our power. Maybe you're more powerful than you give yourself credit for. Maybe you're not on this planet to be small. Because to be a good meditator, which, I meditate loads. To be a good meditator is, in a sense, we can be quiet. We can sit there, we can not make noise, we can be peaceful. People around us can feel like we're peaceful. But for some meditators, we can be peaceful, and at the same time, if we haven't let our power, if we haven't let our wildness, if we haven't let our joy come up into experience, if we're not in the full expression of who we're meant to be, there will be something raging inside, even if we're at peace. And actually, the more meditation you do, the more inquiries you do, if you're into non-duality, if you're staying with this sense of being aware of awareness, the more you do that, the more pressure will be put on your system to be yourself. Because when you come into truth, when you come into the truth of who you are, when you really come into your heart, then the natural thing is for you to express in the way that you're born to express. And if you're not born to be a quiet, peaceful person, if you're not born to be a sweet, peaceful person, if you're born to be wild, then that pressure is going to keep getting put on you. So then you might ask the question, you might resonate with this and be like, holy fuck, like I'm trying to be something that I'm not. The reason I'm not calm is because I'm not meant to be calm. And I'm not saying you're not meant to be at peace, because you can be at peace. Peace and wildness can go together. The more you are authentically being yourself, the more peace you will feel inside. But that might not be sitting there and being calm. You might find more peace dancing. You might find more peace being angry. Maybe you're a people pleaser. Maybe you repress anger. Maybe you're someone who never gets angry. I don't get angry. I'm a good Buddhist. And a good Buddhist won't get angry if someone affronts them, if someone offends them. They might send them loving kindness. And that's admirable. There's something sweet about that. But also, that is not healthy. For the most part, that's not healthy, because you're repressing your power. And if you really start speaking up for yourself, if you really start expressing your anger in a healthy way, of course, if you start expressing your anger, then you will be more peaceful, you will be more loving, you will be more joyful. Who are you? Not in the spiritual sense now. Who are you as a person? What were you here to express? Are you meant to be small, or are you meant to be big? Okay, so the question comes, I feel, yes, there's something more in me. Before I got into spirituality, I wasn't wanting to be a calm person. I was sociable, I was loud, I was da-da-da. I've always known that's in me. So how to come back into it? Well, the way that I started getting back in touch with this, probably 5 years ago or something, I was in a community. It was an Osho community, so if you... an Osho community would be the perfect place to go to get into this. And there were workshops on expressing anger, and really in that community, for some reason, as soon as you get there, there's just permission to be yourself. You're able to be yourself. And we worked on expressing anger, and every week there was like a little play we had to put on. So certain things that might not feel particularly spiritual, like going out and doing acting classes, or if you really have a dream in your heart to sing on a stage but you've never sung, you might even feel like you don't have a good voice but you still want to sing, then going to sing, going to kirtans, doing open mics, whatever it is. And it's going to be a slow process to come back into your power. It's not quick. Maybe you want to start a YouTube channel and you want to talk about everything you've learned on your journey. That's a really good way of coming back into your voice, coming back into your power. Maybe you want to learn to dance. 5 rhythms is an awesome way to do this. The other thing is bioenergetics, doing practices which really open your body up. Practices which aren't all about calming the nervous system, practices which might be about expressing and opening the nervous system. And yeah, I'll say again, one of the biggest ones is refinding your voice. So learning to set boundaries, to say no, to speak up for yourself when you need to speak up for yourself. Doing what you really, really enjoy, not necessarily just doing what you think is the most spiritual thing to do, but doing what you really enjoy. Finding what you really want to do, what you really enjoy, and moving with that. So yeah, I hope this has given a little bit of a flavour of what I'm trying to express, that trying to be calm might not be the only direction for you. Learning to be big as well might be what you need. Okay, much love, my friends. Thank you for listening.